Our starting point here is the 2-inch thick seat blank after I've finished cutting the maloof joints for the backrest risers. Then I simply cut out the shape on the bandsaw, followed by sanding down to the line on the belt sander. And then I added a 1/4 inch round over to both the top and the bottom edges. Here is a side view of the profile I'm going to carve in the seat. You can see that the seat is 1 7/8 inches deep, and I'm carving down to a depth of 1 1/8 inch in the back, and then slope upwards at about a 4% slope until reaching the point near the front of the seat that's only a 1/2 inch deep. And then at the very front, it slopes down again to a depth of about 3/4 inch. And now this shows the front view that shows the dish profile that we're going to carve out on each side of the seat. And that dish profile extends down much of the seat. Okay, the next step will be to drill a series of depth holes, starting at about a 1/2 inch in the front, going to 1 1/8 in the back. And I'm going to use this plunge router to do that drilling. Rather than the drill, the plunge router is actually much nicer. It's easier to adjust the height, and it also gives you a very flat bottom hole. You can see I'm adjusting the height now to go from an 1/8 inch to 5/8 inch here. I'm going to do 5/8 inch holes and on and on. So it's just a quick way of doing it. Finally, now we're going to start grinding, and we're using this Kutzall shaping disc here, which works very nice with an angle grinder, which is running at roughly 10,000 RPM. And we're just going to start grinding away, and you kind of do it evenly over the whole surface of the, you don't just pick one area that you start grinding on. You just start kind of going everywhere. And we'll watch a little bit of this here. Now you see what I'm doing is going around the edge. So this is where you kind of got to go slow. I want to come right up to that line you can see there and shape it out. And I'm probably removing, I don't know, maybe as much of an 1/8 inch in each pass here, something like that. It grinds off pretty fast. It's kind of hard to see in this video. But here I'm going pretty slow to get around that curve. Now it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, this line is just roughly where I want it. It really isn't going to matter if it's exactly there. And pretty soon here we've got some more video coming up that's sped up. You can just see some of what we're doing for a couple of minutes here. Overall, I spend about 2 hours at this stage. Especially, I'm taking off quite a bit. 1 1/8 inches is more than a typical seat, I would say, but that's partly because I want this slope in the seat, and that's because this being a swivel seat, the legs do not give any tilt. Usually the legs of a typical dining room chairs will give some tilt to the back, but here I don't have any of that. So any tilt that I'm going to have to the back has to come from the seat itself. And so it means I'm, got a little more slope going on in the seat than usual. So here I'm getting further along. You can see I'm starting to go kind of cross direction here, which helps to kind of get the shape you want. I'm getting this dish shape, and I really don't have a guide to that dish. I'm just kind of doing it by eye. The only real guide are those little holes that show me the depth at each point. Like I say, they start at a 1/2 inch at the front, and then they go as far as deep as 1 1/8 inch in the back, and it increases. Each one's an 1/8 inch deeper than the other. Okay, now here, what I'm finishing up the grinding with, I've reduced the speed of the grinder. I have a variable speed one, and I find that going slow here, it just lets me clean up the carving a little bit before moving on to the next step. I mean, things are still pretty rough at this point, even after the slow speed, but that definitely cleans it up some. Okay, now the next step is to use this little 2-inch sander, which has got this little flexible foam thing on it. It's just put into a standard drill that runs, I don't know, 1800 RPM probably, or something like that. And this works surprisingly well. I never would have expected it to work well. I've got 80 grit sandpaper in there, And this really does some cleaning up of the carving. And you'll notice, if you can see in the picture, I left a little bit of those depth holes remaining, just maybe a 16th inch or so, because I try to keep those around until the very end, because once they're gone, you don't know where you are. And so, like I say, I left maybe a 16th inch or so that will be removed with this sander. And I spend a fair amount of time with this piece now again, probably about an hour or so of sanding now with this little sander. Okay, now here I'm going to start working on that back area, and this is where that little 2-inch really helps me reach in. It's a fairly deep dish in the back there. Again, it's dropping 1 1/8 inches, pretty sharp bend. You can't see that well in the video, but this lets me reach into there pretty well with that flexible piece. I'm able to get it at all pretty well. Okay, and here I'm kind of finishing up. I'm at the very end. It's almost done with the 2-inch sander, which is getting most of the work done at this point. And you can see the little depth holes are essentially all gone. I do try to keep them until just about the end, but they're at this point pretty much done. Okay, and finally I'm going to finish up with a random orbital sander. And here again, I've got one of these little flexible foam pads on there that helps it, conform to the curves. And here I'm just going to go through now the standard grids. I'll start with 120 and then move up to 220 final. And then you can see again that flexible foam lets me reach into the corners, especially that they're getting that back corner is a little bit tricky with the random orbital, but I'm able to do it doing this up and down motion that you see there. It kind of goes up and down that steep section there and gets it pretty well. And here we have the final result after about, probably a total of 3 to 4 hours of work, probably 4 total.